So let's generate the motivation that by hearing and thinking about the Buddha's teachings and putting them into practice, that we may purify our own minds, increase our own wisdom and compassion, and through that make a positive contribution to the lives of the people around us, to society in general, to the global community, and to all sentient beings, whoever and wherever they are. So it's a vast motivation, and we're just doing something together for an hour and a half, but we'll take it with us and continue to contemplate and meditate. So it will have a long-term beneficial result. Okay, so there's some questions here. Okay. Okay. So if no one owns anything ultimately, why are there precepts against stealing? This is a very good question. Yeah, it's an extremely good question, actually, because we hear some people misunderstand the bodhisattva practice or misunderstand the tantric practice and say, there's no good, there's no bad, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, which is not at all true. In fact, the people who understand the ultimate nature live their lives according to the precepts in even more finer detail than other people. So the more you understand that ultimately, if you have the correct understanding, which is very difficult to gain, but if you understand that on the ultimate level, when we analyze exactly what something is, we cannot pinpoint anything. That does not mean that nothing exists. It means that it does not exist in the way it appears to us. Because things appear to us to have their own nature, their own essence, objectively out there. When we check and examine, we begin to see that no, things depend on our mind, and not just our mind, on the minds of all beings. And what we agree to call something, how we agree to act. So just because we can't find something with ultimate analysis doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. That's a huge misunderstanding on the part of people who say that about the bodhisattva practice or about Tantra. And that understanding actually leads them to create a great deal of negativity. Because if you think, oh, everything is empty of inherent existence, so there's no virtue, no non-virtue, no good karma, no bad karma, I'll just do whatever I feel like because it's all empty. those people then give license to their ignorance and their afflictions, by which they create incredible destructive karma, which will ripen in lower rebirths for them. Okay, so that's why we say the culmination of the view is hard to gain, because we have to understand that although we can't pinpoint what something exactly is when we analyze it with ultimate analysis, when we don't analyze it with ultimate analysis, things appear and they function, and we live in the world with them. Okay, and those two things are not contradictory. Okay, in fact, if emptiness, the ultimate emptiness of inherent existence, meant that nothing existed, then practicing the path to awakening would be ridiculous. Awakening wouldn't exist. There would be nobody to practice the path. There would be no path. Okay, and that clearly is not our experience. We know things exist. The problem is we think they exist in a way that they don't exist. Okay, so I often use the example, my made up example. And remember, not every aspect of the story is, an analogy to the meaning. Imagine you were born with sunglasses on. Okay, everything you saw from your birth onwards would appear dark to you. Would you realize that that appearance of things as dark was a false appearance if you had had your sunglasses on since birth? No, you wouldn't realize it was a false appearance, because that's all you ever knew. Okay, so it's the same. We carry with us, our mind stream carries with us the ignorance from beginningless time that acts as sunglasses, that actually projects an inaccurate way of existing on phenomena that we assent to and we believe is true. Okay, and even when somebody says, oh, you have sunglasses on, things aren't really dark like that, the person's first reaction is, well, how do I know? This is all I've ever known. They don't believe it at first. So it's similar with us when we're, we learn, oh, the Buddha said that the way things appear to us isn't the way they exist. We get very confused. Well, how do they exist then? And then sometimes we make up even more fantasized ways than inherent existence and project those onto things, like they're all, what is it? Rainbows from, the gods in some realm. And then that leads to the conspiracy theories. What was it? How the forest fires last year were because some Italian, um, computer stuff in space caused them. This was one of the Q ideas about, why forest fires started. Okay. I mean, there's lots of these kind of snake oil things. Yeah. And we laugh when it's other people's snake oil and they believe it. But when we project our own snake oil on things, then we think it's true. Yeah. So, Dharma practice is really about checking things very deeply and questioning, how do things really exist? Yeah. And being able to bring together that ultimately we can't identify something, but conventionally all those things exist and function. Okay. Okay, so that's why there's precepts against stealing, because the conventional world still exists. Ultimately, we may not be able to find who owns something or what possession means, but conventionally in society, we have things that are more or less agreed upon that we abide by. So those things have three criteria to exist. They're known, in society, but that doesn't, just because people think them doesn't mean they exist. Otherwise, JFK would have made Trump president back in Inauguration Day in 21. Yeah, that's what Q said. Yeah, that JFK's son, JFK's son hadn't really died, and he was going to come back. And even though the inauguration was happening in a few hours, he was somehow going to arrange that Trump was inaugurated and became the president. This was in January of 2021. And people believed that. I was watching, they interviewed people near the Capitol, and people were sure that was going to happen. Okay, so just because people believe something doesn't mean it's true. You remember the scandal? That Hillary Clinton was running a ring of pedophiles in a pizza parlor's basement. And one guy believed it, and he drove there with his military weapon because he was going to rescue those kids. Because he believed it. Okay, so it has to be something that is known kind of in society, but that alone does not mean it exists. Okay, but second, it cannot be contradicted by another valid cognizer. Okay, so if I come in this room and I say, oh, what am I going to say? You know, I'm gonna look at this thermos and say, it's made of metal, but it can be eaten. I can bite into it and chew it, and I'm propagating this doctrine of eatable thermoses, yeah, or eatable water bottles. Then you don't have to recycle them; you just eat them afterwards. Okay, so very good for the environment. So I'm going around selling all these edible water bottles, and all these people go, what a great idea. This is fantastic, and everybody buys water bottles really believing that they can eat them, and when they try and chew them, and it doesn't work, you say, look, you have to practice harder. Yeah, you have to develop your teeth more. It's because your teeth are not developed enough that then you can't chew them. But you work on your teeth, and then you'll be able to eat them. And then people believe it. Okay, you remember the story of the emperor's new clothes? That story is so Buddhist, you can't know. Really, I think the guy who wrote it was a Buddhist, because the emperor's going around saying, I have new clothes, and he's totally in his birthday seat, and everybody looks at him. That what they see is a naked emperor, But, they're so concerned about fitting in with everybody else. They say, "Oh, what beautiful brocade he's wearing. Oh, this." And it's only one little kid who says, "Mommy, that guy's naked," and the kid's told to shut up. Okay. But the kid was the one who had the correct cognizer, not all the other people who were talking themselves into believing a conspiracy theory. Okay, so if something can be contradicted by somebody with a conventional valid cognizer, then it doesn't exist. Okay, so if I come in and I say, this book is pink, I see it as pink. Maybe some of you will say, "Oh, I have so much faith in my Dharma teacher. This book must be pink. I just can't see it." Give me a break. Okay. No, if you have any intelligence, you're going to say, "No, the book is purple." Or, yeah, you might come along and say, "I think it's green." Yeah. And then other people may go, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." But it is green, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So to exist, it can't be contradicted by another valid cognizer, conventional cognizer. And it cannot be contradicted by a valid cognizer of the ultimate. Okay. So if you saw this as an inherently existent book, then that could be contradicted because there's no inherently existent book here. Okay. So there are criteria for conventional existence. It doesn't just mean anything goes. Yeah. Yeah. So, then you may say, "Well, yes, but," yeah, remember the yes, but. Okay. There's no one who owns anything ultimately. Yeah. Uh, yeah. And so things exist conventionally, but do we still need precepts? Yeah. Well, yes, we do, because we live together and we are, believe it or not, a group of ignorant, deluded people. Okay. So this is one of the basic truths we have to realize to practice the Dharma. Yeah. That we may think we are brilliant and we may have diplomas and degrees and trophies as proof, but in terms of the Dharma, in terms of knowing how things ultimately exist, we don't have a clue. Okay? So there's many different kinds of knowledge in this world, and we may have it down in terms of one kind of knowledge, but be very ignorant in another kind of knowledge. Okay. When I was, to give you an example of the reverse of this, the example I just gave you was somebody who's good at some field in worldly knowledge, but they don't know have the wisdom for the Dharma knowledge. When I was writing in the Library of Wisdom and Compassion, I was writing some of the volumes about emptiness. Now, I have no realization of emptiness at all, but when you write about it, you start thinking about it. So, in the middle of writing about it and thinking about it and trying to understand, then people ask me, "What kind of carpet do you want in the Buddha hall?" Yeah, and how? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We need an elevator, which needs to be a triple phased elevator, but we only have single phase elevator. So it needs a Transform. What? Transform. Oh, single-based power. Okay. So it needs a transformer, and I think, and a converter. Yeah. Anyway, it needs a bunch of things. I have no understanding of electricity. Yeah, I have no idea what a transformer is, or what a converter is, or what single or triple phase electricity is. Yeah. I can talk to you about, how it exists, and tell you what the Madhyamikas say about it, what the Chittamadrins say about it, and so on. But I have no idea how it works. So that's the other, um, the opposite way. So we need both knowledge of the ultimate mode of existence, but we need conventional knowledge. Otherwise, we don't know what to do in society. Yeah. You go in the kitchen and it's your turn to cook, and where's the peanut butter and jelly? you know, because that's the only thing you know. Yeah, everybody loves that. Yeah, PB&J for lunch, and maybe some carrot sticks, and of course ice cream. That's some people's ability to cook. This is reminding me of a funny story. One of our nuns, who's not here right now, I'm sure she's watching this though. And I'm sure she's going to laugh. Yeah. Okay. So we were very small. It was at the beginning of the Abbey, taking turns cooking, and it was her turn cooking. And so there were three of us living here, and she was going to cook spaghetti. So she had like a 2-pound bag of spaghetti, and it looked, like if you divide it among three people, it would be okay. So she put the whole bag in a thing of boiling water. Fortunately, she used a big pot and cooked a 2-pound bag of spaghetti. Okay, now I can see some of you know what that means, and some of you were like her and didn't know that 2 pounds of spaghetti, when it boils in a pot, yeah, multiplies and manifests infinite bodies. Okay, so we need both kinds of wisdom. Yeah. And we need to be able to laugh at ourselves. Okay, so next question. I do not think the government should interfere with my ability to have a baby or not. I agree. I think people should stay out of other people's bedrooms. Okay. That does not mean I'm pro-abortion. It just means I think the governments should stay out of people's private business, like what goes on in their bedrooms and who marries who, and what happens with your own body. Okay. But if my body belongs to my parents and all the farmers and doctors who've cared for me, do I have a right to feel as I do? Okay. Or do I need to go around and ask all of those other people whether I need to have the baby or not have the baby, and get everybody's consensus? No, on a conventional level, yeah, it's your body. Yeah. What the debate is who has control over your body. Some people see that as the debate. Other people see the debate as, the fetus is a person and so has all the rights of a person, which would make any doctor's action to save the mother's life possibly murder. If a bunch of people in the court who know nothing about medicine were to judge the situation, whether the mother needed an abortion or not. And some states wouldn't even let the doctors do that. There's no provision for incest. Yeah, incest or rape, So, people are debating over different issues. It's a complicated thing. Yeah, yeah. That's why, personally speaking, I don't think this should be something that the law or the government is involved in because it's too complicated and it's too personal. Yeah. And if people come to me about it, I know I'm getting off on a track, but people will probably ask if I don't tell you first. Um, you know, I encourage people, if they're healthy and if the baby's healthy, have the baby and give it up for adoption. Now, I know that that is not easy for a mother to give up a child that she has birthed. Yeah. But my little sister is adopted and she was given up at birth. And I want to thank her birth mother for doing that because I really wanted a little sister. And at that point in time, because of my mother's health, she couldn't have another baby. So I got a little sister. I hit the jackpot. Okay. I'm very grateful to her birth mother. And I think my sister had a very good life. And I know it was hard on the birth mother. Okay. But so I encourage people, if you can, have the baby. But it's your choice, and whatever you decide is your choice and your responsibility. It's not the responsibility of a bunch of male people in the Congress who know nothing about this kind of topic, or the people in the courts. You're asked to judge on a medical procedure, but you don't know enough about medical procedures to make a wise decision. Okay. So that's why I think it should be, it shouldn't be a law. It should really be up to individuals. Okay. But of course, not nobody. Many people don't believe my extreme wisdom, and they have many different opinions. But because their opinions are different than mine, they must be wrong, because my opinions are always right. Aren't your opinions always right? This is another one of my rules of the universe. Okay, very important rule of the universe. Whatever I think is right, even if I change what I think from one day to the next. First, this one's right, then I believe the opposite, then that one's right. It makes perfect sense. It's totally logical, isn't it? I hope you realize I'm being sarcastic and that I'm not crazy. Some of you are just sitting there like, oh boy, this lady's off her rocker. Okay. But we see what's off the rocker are rules of the universe that place ourselves as the ultimate judge of everything. Okay. Okay. So, yes, you have a right to feel as you do, and you don't need me to tell you that. Yeah. You are a responsible, thinking adult who can think for yourself and draw your own conclusions and check out the situation well and do what you believe to be right after looking at the whole situation. Okay, then more questions. People are asking it quite good questions. Yeah. Okay. When we visualize the field of compassion, It is with sentient beings in human form. Please explain why it doesn't include beings in all the realms. Well, our cats are asking the same question. Yeah, our cats, Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeka. Their names are the names of the four immeasurables, okay, of loving love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. They're working on living up to their names. Okay, we all are working. We're given Dharma names when we ordain. We're all working to live up to our Dharma names. Okay, so why do we think it's called the field of compassion when we visualize all the other sentient beings around us? Because those are the beings that we generate compassion for, especially the beings who are ill or injured, oppressed in one way or another way. Okay, so we imagine them in human form because in human form, they have a better chance of understanding the Dharma. Yeah. If we imagine that we're surrounded by kangaroos and elephants and snakes and stink bugs and bumblebees and everything else, trying to explain to them why it's important to follow the Buddha's teaching, why it's important to have love and compassion, why it's important to have good ethical conduct. They don't have the ability to understand. So we imagine them in human form, because we hope human beings have the ability to understand. We have tried very much with our cats to teach them, do not chase bugs, do not chase squirrels or chipmunks or voles or moles or mice or anything that runs past you and looks like a toy that is also delicious. Okay, we try to explain to our cats that every living being values their life more than anything else, and they, just as they do, so they should respect the life of all these other beings. Yeah. But when Upeka is out there, he's the dark colored cat out there, and because there's some chipmunks who live right nearby, who run around like crazy. When Upeka is engaged, mesmerized by those chipmunks. Yeah, he doesn't want to hear us say that the chipmunks value their life as much as he values his life. Yeah, he just looks at us like, what are you saying? Okay, you don't want me to eat catnip? To eat chipmunks? Give me some catnip. Yeah. So this is why we imagine them. Yeah. It would be nice if our kitties could learn. Yeah. We try. We teach them. Yeah. When we take them on walks, we even circumambulate the stupa, the Buddha statue in the middle of the garden, so that they have some imprints of seeing the Buddha. Yeah. But they aren't interested in that. Yeah. My tree she'll just lie down. Yeah. What does Upeka do? He smells everything. And Mudita, she nibbles the grass. Okay, and where's Venerable Sultram? In the back. What does Karuna do? She what? She ignores everything. Yes. Okay. So actually, some human beings are the same way. You try to explain the Dharma, and they lie down, you know, or they may not nibble grass, but they nibble some Fritos. Yeah, yeah. So, but we try. We try. Okay. How can we work with the strong sense of entitlement that comes from equating our money with our labor and effort? Yeah, that's a good question. This person is honest and they are admitting, yes, I have a strong sense of entitlement that is linked to the money that I earned, you know? Okay, so how do we overcome that? Uh, why? Well, there's another question first. Why do we even want to overcome that kind of clinging? Why do we even want to realize that ultimately there's nobody who owns anything? Yeah. It's because when we concretize everything and cling on to everything as I am the agent that owns this concrete object that does not belong to any other person who is other. Yeah. And we make everything concrete, then we give rise to a lot of attachment and anger and revenge and all sorts of horrible attitudes and actions that are motivated by those attitudes. So, this is why we want to understand emptiness, because it softens all of this. Yeah, we realize that everything is not like, there's a real me who possesses real money, who worked really hard on a job, who really deserves everything and even more. Why? Because I am I. Okay, so that becomes very solid. We can see, when that way, how that way of thinking brings difficulties. Yeah. So, um, yeah, so that's why we need to overcome that attitude. Yeah. And now the question comes, how do we do it? Well, of course, understanding emptiness is the best way to do it, but that's a little bit difficult. So, in the meantime, we do things that are easier. One thing that I found very easy, much easier, is to really reflect on the kindness of others. And, take one thing I possess, or one thing that I know, and trace its causes. Just sit in meditation and trace its causes. Okay, so my chugu. So this is one of my dear possessions. I was ordained in it. Yeah, I want to, when I die, I want to be wrapped in this. If I'm not wrapped in it, don't worry. I won't make a big deal out of it. But if you remember, wrap my body in this. But like I said, it doesn't, at the end, it's not a big deal. Okay, so where did this chugu come from? Chugu was the name for this patched robe that we receive at ordination. Okay, well, it was made by a tailor in McLeod-Ganj, but I bought the material in the US. So there was a fabric store in the US, and the people who owned and operated the fabric store, but also the person who stocked the store, who put the bolt of cloth on the shelves. And there was somebody who delivered the cloth to the fabric shop. And there was a factory that made the cloth. Okay. And it's polyester. So there was polyester cotton. So there were people involved in the growing and picking of the cotton and the spinning of the cotton into thread. And then polyester, I don't know what they pay, some kind of, they make it out of poly and ester. I don't know how they make polyester. Okay. But I think Polly and Esther were involved. So, okay. So somebody was involved in that. And then somebody made the dye. Yeah, the cotton doesn't grow in this color. Okay. So somebody made the dye. And then there were people, moving it all around and getting it from place to place. There were people who invented the machines that could make cotton into thread, and who invented the machines who wove those threads into cloth. And there were people, because the machines were made out of metal, who worked the mines, who got the, whatever metal in the mines. Mining is a very, very dangerous job. Yeah. But they risked their lives to get the metal to build the machines that made the cloth that the truck drivers took from one place to another and eventually to the fabric store, that the person who works for the fabric store put on the shelf, that the person at the counter rang up, that how did I pay? Did I pay for it? I can't remember. Somebody else must have paid for it. But in any case, the money came from the money god up in heaven. I don't know. The money came from some other person, you know, and they put it in a bag. And then there were people who ran the airplane and the whole airplane industry, and and got the oil from the ground to make the planes fly, that flew me and the cloth to Dharamsala. And then there was the bus driver in this old rickety Indian bus that you can't believe, together with some chickens and sheep as passengers. Really seriously, in India, this was in 1977. Yeah, you rode it. If third class train, which was the only one I could afford, and buses. Yeah, you had chickens and sometimes sheep or goats and all sorts of things as your passenger, your fellow passengers. You're swaying on this bus as you go bumpity bump 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 bump, crash into a chicken. Okay, um, but when you think, how did this come about? And the tailor, and what was the tailor's background? Was he born in Tibet? Did he escape in 1959? Or was he born in India? Yeah. Did he like being a refugee? What was his whole life about? When you think about the incredible number of people involved, and it goes back even further than what I've talked about here, um, it's just astounding. And you say, how can I ever say this is mine? Yeah, it came about through the labors of so many other people. How can I just say, it's mine? I can do with it what I want. Like we did when we were 3 years old. Okay. And you begin to really feel, wow, I have been the recipient of a tremendous amount of kindness in my life that I've never even recognized as kindness, that I've just taken for granted. Yeah. And it's a very humbling experience. that really cuts our arrogance. But it also opens our heart because we think of all these people, most of whom were strangers. Yeah. And somebody may say, yes, but they didn't, transport the fabric and make the fabric and invent the dye and invent the machines and mine the metal and cook the food that all these people ate. They didn't do that for my sake. So how can I say that they're kind to me? That's not the point. People don't have to do things with us in mind as an individual in order for us to be the recipient of their kindness. Because the bottom line is, if they didn't do what they did, we would not have what we have. And we would not know what we know because nobody would have taught us. Yeah. So, that question of, well, they didn't have the intention to benefit me, so why are they kind to me? Yeah, that question needs to be tossed out. That's not a valid question. Yeah, because really, bottom line is, if they didn't do it, I'm the one who suffers. And they work their jobs, and some of them, I don't know, job conditions in India versus job conditions in America, they both have their problems. Yeah. But those people worked those jobs, hard as they were, for as much time as it took to earn whatever they got paid. And I'm the beneficiary of it. Okay. So I have a responsibility to take care of all these things, whether people give them to me or I trade plastic and paper for them, because they are the product of so many other people's labor, And these people are just like me. They want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. I need to respect what I have because it embodies their kindness. Okay. So the article itself may not be so important, but remembering the kindness of the people whose lives and whose life energy lies behind it, that's really important. Otherwise, we just go through life, kind of like who? I don't want to tell you. But, you go through life just, I am the queen of everything. I'm the queen for the day, but the day never ends. Yeah, so I am always queen. Okay, so for me, thinking about the kindness of others really helps me overcome that strong sense of entitlement that comes from of equating my money with my labor and my effort. And especially as a monastic, when it isn't my money, it's very clearly not my money, then it's even more so that, this comes from the efforts of others. Okay. And even all of us, we had lunch today. Yeah. Did any of you buy the entire lunch? Yeah. People brought this and that and everything, and we put all the offerings together. Yeah. And not only the offerings that you brought, but there's people in Spokane and Coeur d'Alene and Rathdrum and what's the other town? Ethel. Yeah. All those people in the different places who contribute money to feed the people that come to the Abbey. Yeah. We don't know any of we may know a few of them, but we don't know any of the rest of those people. We don't know, all the people lying behind our lunch, or our clothes, or our cars, or this carpeting, or this building. And yet, it's all here and we use it. It's really astounding when you think about it. Yeah, really astounding. Like how come I get to be here and enjoy all this? Yeah. Instead of, I deserve the best treatment. No. Okay. Any questions or comments so far? Yeah.
Getting back to your analogy of being born with sunglasses, I was just thinking how the enlightened ones, the Buddha, Arhats, etc., they weren't born awakened either.
Yeah.
They really had to work very, very hard for eons and eons. Just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah. They had to work very hard, at the path. And we'll have to work very hard at the path too. But how fortunate we are to have found a reliable path. Doesn't matter how long it takes, because finding a reliable path takes even longer than practicing it. In all of samsara, with all of our, diverse, contorted actions, it takes a long time to meet the Dharma. Yeah, but once we've met it, yeah, then they say, well, it's kind of like, you're halfway there, just meeting the teachings and having faith in the teachings. Okay. So that's another thing I thought maybe I should talk about, because there's a number of people who are comparatively new to the Dharma, is you may come here and say, oh, wait a minute, I've gone to other groups and, at a retreat, you meditate. And here, yeah, we meditate, but there's so many teachings, so many words, so many concepts, so many terms I don't know the meaning of. Why are we doing all that? Isn't that more just proliferation of conceptualization? Can't I want to meditate so I can make my mind calm. Yeah, so I can stop the chatter in my mind. Okay, so there's different motivations for meditating. Yeah. If you want it, if you're meditating to stop the chatter in your mind, and that's the level of your motivation, you don't care much about, is there a path to awakening? Yeah, because your interest is in calming your mind right here, right now, in this life. Okay. What we do here, what we're teaching here, is the path to awakening. Yeah. Which is why we put so much emphasis on the motivation of bodhicitta, so that is our inspiration, our aspiration to practice the path, to learn the path. Yeah. If your interest is in just calming your mind, there's so many apps out there. Yeah. And you can get an app, 99.99, no, 9.99, cheaper nowadays, for you, special price, and you can watch beautiful images and listen to music and just practice mindfulness. What is mindfulness? What is mindfulness you're practicing? Who's the teacher of that mindfulness? What is their training? Yeah. What is the teacher's motivation? What's all this about? Because mindfulness is the latest buzzword now, isn't it? Everybody wants to be mindful. But do people know what it means? They say, well, mindfulness, it's Buddhism. Well, not the mindfulness that you're learning in the apps, and your therapist may be teaching you mindfulness. That's secular mindfulness. That's helpful in a therapeutic situation. But it's not the Buddhist mindfulness that leads to awakening. Okay, so here what we're emphasizing is the path to awakening, which is different than what you're going to be getting in the New Age newspaper. Do they still have New Age newspapers? Huh? Everything's on the web now, huh? Yeah. Okay. They had them when, I was a baby dinosaur. Everybody got the New Age newspaper, with all these gurus whose names you couldn't pronounce, who just became gurus last Friday. Yeah. Oh, here's another one. Okay. So before you freak out at this one, just remember that the audience was from a different culture at a different time period. Okay. Just remember that, and then we can all freak out together. Okay. So here, this is the section of the Bodhisattva's perfection of generosity in two different body types. So first of all is the body type of an ordinary living being, somebody like us. Yeah. So what is meant by fulfillment of the perfection of generosity within the body produced from the karma generated by the afflictions? Okay, so our body, we took this body, which is not a perfect body, is it? It gets old and sick and dies. And there's no way around that to say, the body is fantastic. It gets old and sick and dies. Nobody likes that. Okay. But how did we take it? Because of ignorance and our afflictions and the actions that we did motivated by them. Okay, so Nagarjuna responds to this question. When one has not yet gained the Dharma body, okay, is the kind of body that you have when you are an Arya, somebody who's realized the ultimate nature directly. Okay, when you have not yet gained the Dharma body, and when your fetters have not yet been, your fetters or your afflictions have not yet been brought to an end, okay, so that's that body that we're talking about. One becomes able to completely give all that one possesses. So this is even with an ordinary body. But of course, you have to really go very deep in your practice to do this. Okay, one is able to give completely of all that one possesses, both inwardly and outwardly, including all manner of precious objects, and including one's head, precious objects, including your smartphone. Okay, that's your most precious object. Okay, your car, that comes next. Yeah, then whatever else you have. Okay, and including your head, eyes, marrow, brain, country. You give your country. Wealth, wives, and children. Don't freak out. Okay. Doing so without one's mind moving or turning away from it. Take, for instance, Prince Sudina, who made a gift of his 2 children to a Brahmin. Next, he relinquished his wife, and even then his mind still did not turn away from continuing on with this practice of generosity. Okay, so okay. So the purpose of this, the point of this story is that there exists people, even ordinary people like us, who can give away everything that is dear to them without fear. Yeah, fear is something that can really hinder our generosity. Yeah. We fear that if we give it away, we won't have it. And if we don't have it, we will suffer. So we don't give it away. This is also, I think, what lies behind people hoarding, and having just mountains of stuff in their residence, because there's a fear that if I give it away, I will need it and it won't be there. Or if I give it away, I will lose my identity. Yeah. So fear is a big hindrance to generosity. The point in this is that you can develop your mind to a state where you can give without fear. Yeah. Where there's enough security within your own mind to know that whatever situations you encounter, you will be able to handle them with your Dharma tools. Okay? So it's not the confidence that whatever situation I encounter, I will find something to eat, so I don't need to be afraid of going hungry. No, it's a different kind of confidence that whatever happens, I'll be able to handle it through my practice. Yeah. So that's the point of the story. Now, the part that you freak out about that makes you miss totally the point of the story is the part, where there's a big cultural difference here. Like, what do you mean give away your spouse and your kids? They're human beings. They aren't your property. You can't give them away at will. And there's all sorts of stories in the Jataka stories, which are they're like legends that are supposedly tell the previous lives of the Buddha when he was still a bodhisattva. And he would give away his wife and kids to different spirits and all sorts of different things. And, I can see some of you already are really, you know, especially us women, it's like, don't give us away. But I remember when this came up in Precious Garland, another one of Nagarjuna's talks. And of course, my teacher, Geshe Jumpa Tetsho, was going through it. And of course, people brought up this issue. Geshe, you can't give away a human being. And he said, well, what is, first of all, in that society, you could. And in India today, in some circles, not all circles, you can. In Afghanistan, did you remember not long ago, a few months ago, there was a story about one man with several children, and he sold his daughter, who was like 8 or 9 years old, to somebody else, so he had some money to feed his family. He sold his little girl. This little kid is shrieking. She's terrified. She doesn't want to leave her family and be married to some man who is like 50 or 60 years old when she's like 8 or 9, and who knows what in the world this guy's going to do to her. And it's all legal, and it's condoned in some circles of Afghan society. Yeah. So this is not something, unheard of, even in the 20th century. Yeah, sorry, I told you I was a dinosaur, the 21st century. Yeah. But, the meaning, Geshe-la explained, was to give away what is precious and dear to you. Yeah. So even in those cultures where a woman was a man's property, she was a very precious object. Yeah. Why was she precious? Well, she had to be beautiful. She had to really know how to cook, and she had to wash dishes very well, and she had to have babies. Okay, and that was the basic job requirement for a wife. But that made her dear to him because it gave him what he wanted. Our culture is totally different now. Yeah. Of course we don't judge and evaluate. We don't make decisions based on those kind of concerns now. Although maybe there are people in this country that do, you know? Yeah. A man's role, what is it? Man's role is, I forget what his role was, but the woman's role is in the kitchen. Yeah. There's many people in this country who, who believe that. Yeah. So there's, many of these things and how we react to the teachings are determined by the culture we're in. So when we have a reaction like that, don't blame the teachings, just understand that the example is from a very different time and culture. So don't go around thinking you can give us away. Well, certainly not nuns. We're not your wives. But don't give your wives away either, okay? And women, don't give your husbands away. And if you're gay, don't give away whoever it is you're married to. It doesn't matter. We don't give human beings away. Okay. Now here's another interesting story that may make us go, huh? Wait a minute. Okay. So this is about King Sarvada. Okay, so this kind of generosity is also exemplified by King Sarvada, who was vanquished by an enemy country and who then fled and hid in the furthest reaches of the forest. He encountered a Brahmin from a faraway country who sought to receive alms from him. Here's the king who's a refugee in the forest, and the Brahmin's asking for alms. As for himself, the king, this country had been crushed, his family had been wiped out, and he had been forced to flee alone and go into hiding. Yeah, so he's really in no shape to give alms to the Brahmin. Because the king felt pity for the Brahmin's hardship in having come from afar and yet having gotten nothing, he said to the Brahmin, "I am King Sarvada. The new king has sent men out to find me, offering a handsome reward for my capture." Okay. King Sarvada then immediately tied himself up and gave himself to the Brahmin. And the Brahmin then turned him over to the new king and the army that was looking for King Sarvada, and received great wealth and valuables in reward. Okay, another story we go, oh God, this king is tying himself up and giving himself to this Brahmin, who then betrays the king's generosity by turning him over to the new king, who will probably slaughter him, and then the Brahmin taking all the wealth and walking off with it because it was the reward money from capturing the old king. We go, what kind of story is this? Again, the point is not all of that. Okay. Yeah. Some of the stories, they give really extreme situations. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's to emphasize what the actual point is, even though we get tripped up in the story itself. But I think the actual point is King Sarvada, although he had no money and no way, with possessions or money or like that, to help this Brahmin, yeah, the only way he had was to give his body and then let himself be turned over to the new king, and the Brahmin gets some reward money from that. And that was the only thing he had to give to the Brahmin so the Brahmin would survive. And so he cared so little about his own life and his own status as king. He wasn't trying to get back on the throne and say it was a rigged election. you know, uh, he wasn't doing that. He said, okay, I'm going to make charity of myself to the barman and enable him to receive the money for that. Okay, so the point is, like, are we, would we give ourselves over to somebody else, who was a stranger who was asking us for something? Yeah, we would go, no way, no way. But what would it take, what would it be like to have a mind that didn't freak out about even thinking of doing that? Yeah. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. Maybe in that culture, it was really an act of generosity for the King Sarvada to do that. Now, if you go to Skid Row and say, I'm tying myself up and giving you my body, and you can turn me into, I don't know, whoever you want to turn me into. And collect the reward, even though you're not going to get anything from me. Um, I'm just citizen Joe Blow. I'm not wanted for anything. What would it take to have a mind that cared about another living being so much that you would be willing to give up your own freedom to do that? Yeah, that would take a lot. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of situations where people could ask us to help. And I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, because each situation you need to look at individually. But, how many situations if somebody asked us to help, but it was dangerous, or we would have to give up some other kind of virtuous activity we were doing in order to do what that person asked, you know? So it's asking us to think about this, and uh, what kind of mind would it entail, and if we weren't willing to give, what what were the reasons for it? Would it be just stinginess, or would it be that we're using our life to create a different kind of virtue? Okay, so here is generosity given on the basis of this is the conclusion of the body generated by afflictions. So he says, in ways such as this, and in all sorts of physical bodies, one gives even one's wife and children, and yet does not, says, stint at all. I don't know what stint means here. In other words, you're not regretting it at all. Treating the practice as if it were merely involved the setting aside of grass or trees. So you're giving away something precious to you, and because of your lack of attachment, it's just as if you were giving the person grass or seeds, or anybody want dirt? Uh, we can give the generosity of dirt, which is expensive, by the way, if you have to buy it yourself. So take advantage of getting it on sale by donation. Okay, one contemplates those things which are given and realize that they exist merely on the basis of a conjunction of conditions. Okay, so what we're giving, that that I'm going to have to stop. It's just the end of the paragraph. Okay, what we're giving has come together just as the culmination of certain causes and conditions. Us as a culmination of causes and conditions. The opportunity to give is just the causes and conditions coming together. So we contemplate, the generosity is just like this. When one pursues this and seeks to find their reality, it can never be found, the ultimate nature. The ultimate inherent existence of something can never be found. Everything is finally characterized by being pure and like nirvana. So this proceeds until one realizes the unproduced dharma's fortitude. Okay, the fortitude of the non-arising phenomena. Okay, this is a certain stage. It's a certain understanding that can be developed at different stages of the path, depending on if you are a sharp faculty disciple or a dull faculty disciple. But once you reach that understanding of emptiness, then you are irreversible in going towards nirvana. Okay, so that is how the person in an ordinary body that depends on afflictions and karma, how they practice generosity. Tomorrow we will start with one very nice story, which tells the story of a picture that I think many of you have seen in different temples.